podcast. We're finally back to talk 49ers Rams right after this.
Let's go get him. Let's go get him today, man. Let's go. Hey, dominate on 3. 1, 2, 3, dominate.
Welcome back to another episode. I'm here with my co-host, Rohan, who always holds it down no matter what. How's it going, Rohan?
Hey, we're doing good. Middle of the week, we had to get a stream out. The 49ers had a nice victory, 24-9 win against the division rival Los Angeles Rams. We're here to talk about it. But first, Marco, how are you doing too?
I'm doing great. It's a Thursday. It's that Friday Eve. So, it's a great day. A great day.
Yeah. And, we're inching closer to the weekend. Both of us now have different gigs. So before we start, got to give a little shout out. My guy Marco is a credentialed college beat writer. He is now credentialed for the Stanford Cardinal game against the Oregon Ducks this weekend. So got to give a shout out.
Congrats to Beavers this weekend.
Oh, Oregon State Beavers. Got it. Oregon State Beavers this weekend. So got to give a shout out to you. Congrats on that.
I'm just trying to keep up with you, Rohan. I'm trying to keep up with you, man. Thank you, though. I appreciate it.
Both making waves out here, man.
You're over there credentialed for Wisconsin, so I had to make sure I get the same thing this way, Gotta keep it going with you. You motivate me, my man.
Next up's basketball, though. I got my first basketball gig this Monday. I think is there's like the pregame or preseason scrimmage and stuff. So
are they doing the doubleheader? Are they doing the doubleheader against Stanford and
Stanford? They play Stanford early. Yeah,
they play. I think
it's
like
one
the
of those
first game of the season.
It's like one of the tournaments. Yeah, we play.
No, I think
we
even
play
before
a
the
local.
tournament.
Oh, really? I know we play a local school first, and then we play Stanford after that. Here, I'll check. I can check, but yeah.
Yeah, because I could have sworn when I was looking at the schedule and everything, they play. I want to say they play Wisconsin like one of their first games of the season.
Mm-hmm.
The second game of the season on a Friday. It's at Wisconsin, November 11th.
That's
it's a doubleheader for you. It's a doubleheader for you guys. So you guys actually play. You guys' men's basketball team play Stanford. You guys' women's basketball team plays. I forgot who they play, but it's a doubleheader right there at the arena. So it'd be pretty nice for you to swing by that one. Watch Stanford kick on some Wisconsin, but you know what I mean. But that's another topic, right? But
yeah, let's get into the real topic. 49ers beat the Rams 24-9. Defense, another masterclass. But there's the topic. You see it in the title. Are there still concerns with the 49ers offense? But Marco, just give me your takeaways from the game, what you saw, and kind of what's the vibe moving forward.
So what I saw from the game is a team that is amazing defensively, elite on defense, absolutely the best defense in the NFL. There's no question about it. It's absolutely the best defensive line, secondary, linebacking core. Everyone on that defense is elite. Like if you look at the defensive line, Nick Bosa's having already a phenomenal start to the season, 6 sacks on the year. You have guys like Arden Key balling out, Ridgeway's balling out, Charles Omenihu and Samson Ebukam are having a phenomenal start to the season. And then you look at the linebackers, you have Fred Warner, Dre Greenlaw. After his first week, picked it up, having a good last 3 weeks. And then in the secondary, you got E-Man, who is a very, very reliable cornerback. And I said it before, and I'm saying it again. He's a cornerback one. Whether you want to say he's a high cornerback one or low, I believe he is that low-end cornerback one who people consider as a cornerback two. I think he's a cornerback one on the opposite side. Tarvarius Ward is looking like a legit cornerback one. You can probably put him in the top 10 right now with how he's playing. And then Talanoa Hufanga. Like I said, there's no reason to bring Jaquiski Tartt back. I'm sorry, I don't care, but that's what it was. I kept saying, don't bring Tartt back. There was no need to do so. Hufanga, and this is not no like discredit to what Tartt has done. Tartt was a good ball player. He was a good ball player for the 49ers. Now, what Hufanga is doing is phenomenal. He looks like one of the best safeties in the NFL right now. There's no question about it. What he's doing near the line of scrimmage, in coverage, breaking on passes. He's making plays. He's doing what the 49ers fans have wanted for a very long time at the safety position. Someone who's taking away the ball. He is doing that. But going to the offensive side of the ball, I mean, I know the conversation, the question is, are there still concerns with the 49ers offense? Absolutely, there's concerns on that 49ers offense. And when we get into it, I'll explain a little bit more. I'll go more in depth on why and what I've seen from the film on what I could explain why there's concerns for that offense. I want to just get what you have to think before we get into depth of what we saw.
Yeah, I mean, you spoke about it. This defense is elite. It's arguably the best defense in the NFL because it's got contributors on all three levels. We saw Javon Kinlaw not play, and we saw Ark Armstead get subbed out for pretty much a half of last week's game because of injury or because of rotation, and the defensive line was stout. You saw Kevin Givens consistently beat the center or the guard, whoever he was lined up against when pass rushing. You saw the defense just in general play well. Drake Jackson had his moments. Ebukam had a hell of a game. Nick Bosa obviously had a hell of a game. Everybody was contributing, and it just shows that, like, when you talk about depth on a defensive line, many people don't understand the 7th, 8th, and 9th players on this defensive line are going to be contributors on this team. It's every player that can play a role given how much we rotate and how important players are. There are backups on this team that can be starters. And then when you look at it, this linebacker group, Drake Greenlaw has been fantastic this year. Fred Warner's Fred Warner. He is the best coverage linebacker in the NFL, and that was shown again. You saw Cooper Kupp. Cooper Kupp had 14 catches for 122 yards. In all honesty, he could have had a lot more with the way Matthew Stafford was solely looking at him. But Fred Warner erased a good amount of Cooper Kupp's production yesterday or on Monday with the way that he was playing defense, be it when Cooper Kupp was targeted or more often when Cooper Kupp wasn't targeted. Fred Warner is an elite talent. You have a top linebacker group. You've got a top defensive line group. The question was always the secondary. Mooney Ward and Emmanuel Mosley have stepped up to the challenge. Both have been good corners, and you saw teams try and test Emmanuel Mosley early on. You saw it in the Denver game. You saw it in the Seattle game. But now teams are realizing you can't really test one side or another because both sides have been pretty good. And so I'm expecting to see teams really move receivers closer into the slot. We saw it in week 3 and week 4. But Nemo Lenore has been a surprise emergence. He's been pretty solid after taking that starting role, and he's a better run fit guy probably. That's probably why he got into that role. Now you've got a strong group with a very strong safety group, which was the biggest surprise going into this year.
So I absolutely agree with everything you just said. So there's a question I want to ask you because that it's in the chat, and it's a question I brought up on the social Twitter bird app, whatever people want to call it nowadays, you know. But I asked a question about Gibson, Jimmy Ward, and my question was mainly, it wasn't this question exact, but it was like, does this mean the 49ers would let Jimmy Ward walk with how they're having their defensive line, linebackers, their outside corners play very well? You could put in a veteran like Tashawn Gibson in there, and he looks like an elite safety right now. If he's playing lights out, I mean, you could argue that he's dropped 2 interceptions, which he has. Like it's there. You mean not really an argument. He's dropped 2 interceptions. That's a fact. But you could make the argument that the 49ers defense does not miss Jimmy Ward like we all thought he would. So it's going to eventually come up. Should the 49ers extend? I'm going to ask it now. Should the 49ers extend Jimmy Ward on the contract at the end of the season? Because everyone's going to want Jimmy Ward to stay. But with how deep of a class it is in the safety class, it's going to start talking. And I think right now is a perfect time, especially because Jimmy Ward might be coming back. If he doesn't ball out like we expect him to, or he has just on par season and he doesn't look even better with the defensive line and the outside corners that he has now, is it necessary to extend Jimmy Ward, Rohan?
I think this is an intriguing question. And we know the question you brought up on Twitter before. Would you extend Jimmy Ward or Emmanuel Mosley? And on both of our responses was Emmanuel Mosley. I think that's a no-brainer decision in my opinion. The reason being Jimmy Ward is already 31 years old. You're going to extend him likely for a 2 to 3 year deal, putting him into putting him even further past his prime. And the one issue with Jimmy Ward hasn't ever been his play. Jimmy Ward has been consistent when he's on the field, but we saw it once again this year. Jimmy Ward hasn't been on the field, right? He missed the first 4 weeks with the hamstring injury. He could return, and the 49ers have shown capable of putting safeties in positions to succeed. Talanoa Hufanga has been a consistent contributor. Tashaun Gibson, a guy that nobody in the league wanted, a guy who's 32 years old, really a guy that the 49ers just picked up at the end of the season, or at the end of the training camp, just because they needed a body, has now been a very consistent contributor for the 49ers. And as many people don't like Jaquiski Tartt, he was also a solid contributor for the 49ers when he played for the team, despite not having many of the statistics that a lot of people wanted at the position. So to me, I think extending Emmanuel Moseley, who's only 25 years old, who could be a cornerback 1 or 2 for like the next 3, 4, 5 years, alongside Charvarius Ward, that's a good mainframe for you to have. But if you're asking, do we extend Jimmy Ward just on its own? I think that that's still a debate, and I still think that Jimmy Ward is valuable to this team because of the way that he plays. Because right now, if we're being honest, there hasn't really been many. We haven't faced the prolific level of offenses yet. We haven't faced the Chargers. We haven't faced the Chiefs. We haven't faced a couple of prolific level offenses. And even if you don't face them in the regular season, you have players like Jimmy Ward so that when you face them in the postseason, you're best prepared. Jimmy Ward has such a vital role on this team because of his versatility. He can play in the box. He can play in the slot. He's a great tackler, and he can play over the top. Tashaun Gibson can do similar things in that he can play over the top because he's got the coverage ability. But can he be utilized in a Jimmy Ward-esque role? I don't think so. I think only Jimmy Ward can be utilized in that role, and I think it fully benefits the team. Now, does this kind of show that the safety position, John Lynch and Kyle Shanahan have been somewhat correct in not valuing the safety position as high? I think so. I think you have to make that argument given how they've put resources elsewhere and the safety position is still produced, right, for years to come. So it's a very intriguing debate. I still think Jimmy Ward is worth extending. I think the 49ers could do so, especially if they can get a similar deal from last time. But it's going to come down to the money, and I would not be surprised if Jimmy Ward isn't a 49er in 2023 because he's already said, I'm gonna F your favorite receiver up, and I'm gonna hit free agency this year because he's anticipating he's going to hit free agency. He gave the Niners a bargain back in 2020. I don't know if he does it again.
And I don't think he should give the 49ers a bargain. I really don't. Get what you can while you can. That's the biggest thing that I want players to do in the NFL is get what you can while you can. And I think at the end of the day, when we think about Jimmy Ward, everyone likes to talk about Jimmy Ward, what he was prior to what he became Jimmy Ward, right? He was a guy who 49ers played at corner, played in the nickel, started playing safety, and that's when he became comfortable. And I think at the end of the day, the reason why I don't extend Jimmy Ward or why Jimmy Ward is not my priority for an extension or for this offseason is because 2 reasons. Age and Talanoa Hufanga, right? You already have one very good safety, at least if you do not sign Jimmy Ward. Hufanga is that very good safety that you have in that back end. So now I would use Jimmy Ward's money, whether that's for a center, whether that's for something else on the offensive line. Mike McGlinchey might not be here. Can you use that money for a right tackle, right? Could you extend Mike McGlinchey, who actually is playing pretty well? Like, there's a lot of things that I would do before I would actually extend Jimmy Ward. And it's no knock to what Jimmy Ward is. Jimmy Ward is a fabulous safety, one of the best safeties in the NFL, probably top 15 in that area. I don't think he's top 10, but I think he's top 15. And there's an argument to be made that he's top 10. Definitely, I would listen to arguments that he's top 10. You could make a valid argument. But for me, I think with how the defense is playing with those safeties, I think it's phenomenal to see. But going into what we saw from the Rams game, because we saw a defense dominate a very bad Rams offensive line, get 6 sacks on Matthew Stafford. They made Matthew Stafford look like Matthew Stafford when he was with the Lions, when he doesn't have an offensive line.
Mm-hmm.
Is this going to be something that the 49ers defense can do to every team? Or was this more so because of the Rams offensive line having their third string center and backup guards in? Is it something we're going to see on a regular basis?
I mean, when you look at it, right, the 49ers defensive line has played well in every single game. Yeah, they've played the Bears, they've played the Seahawks, the Denver Broncos, and now the Rams. But I think that they've been able to neutralize defensive lines, and I think that they've done it in years past, and there's no reason that indicates right now that the 49ers can't do it. And it's not only just because of the players, but it's also because of the coach. DeMeco Ryans effectively utilizes certain aspects of a defensive game plan for certain teams. This week, the 49ers don't blitz. They normally run a four-man front. This week, they blitzed, I believe, on 41% of Matthew Stafford's dropbacks. A clear, or at least that was in the first half, a clear change. Why? Because they want to take advantage of the Rams' depleted offensive line. So DeMeco Ryans' ability to game plan for the specific team that he's facing is an added bonus. And when you top that with knowing your matchup, the Rams, where was their biggest issue? The interior. Their two tackles are somewhat respectable. Joe Noteboom has significantly struggled to start the year, but he's somewhat respectable. He was a good backup to Andrew Whitworth when over the last couple of years, and Havenstein has been a respectable tackle as well. But those three interior guys were new. Coleman Shelton had played guard to start the year, is now at center. You had Bobby Evans and Alaric Jackson, those three. So what did DeMeco Ryans do? Had a number of stunts, and so that's where different offensive linemen who haven't played with each other don't know who to pick up who, leaving open defensive linemen going at Matt Stafford. And Matt Stafford isn't a guy who's really that athletic. He's not going to escape out of the pocket like that. And so that's where you utilize the matchup to your best advantage. So to me, I think the 49ers defensive line can compete. And the one thing that, like, when you have an imposing defensive line, what do teams try and do? They try and utilize the quick game, screens, quick passes, slants, all sorts of different routes, in routes, out routes. But the 49ers linebackers, that's where they come into play. Because if you're utilizing screens, that just means what do you got to do? You got to tackle in space. And the 49ers linebackers have consistently shown to do that. Go back to last year, week 13 against the Seattle Seahawks. That was really not the first time, but one of the biggest times we've seen this. And the 49ers defensive line had a very similar game. It was imposing. So what did Russell Wilson and company try and do? Screen passes. That first half, I think the 49ers limited the Seahawks to under like 50 yards. It was some ridiculous stat because they tackle well in space. So I think with this team, with the infrastructure, especially in the second and third levels, they're going to be able to have the sustainability. And even if they don't, even if they have an off game, you rely on your coverage. You rely on your back end, because that's something we couldn't have said last year, but we've seen at times when Matthew Stafford did have an extended pocket, when one of the quarterbacks earlier this year had an extended pocket, they weren't able to make plays because coverage was that tough.
And I agree, because if you look at what DeMeco Ryans did to the Rams, he forced them to hold on to the ball. I mean, we all know what the Rams want to do. They want to attack deep. They want to take those deep shots and get those 20-yard gains, those big plays, right? That's how their offense lives. And what DeMeco Ryans actually did by blitzing, sending these stunts at this offensive line, is okay, well, if you're going to let those routes develop, you're going to let them develop while I'm sending pressure at you. I know my back end's going to hold up. So if you don't get it out in time and you don't throw with enough anticipation, you're getting sacked. And that's exactly what happened throughout the night for Matthew Stafford. Now, something that happened with the 49ers offensive line was they had great protection on Jimmy Garoppolo all night long. Going back to the All-22, I was watching film yesterday, watched it again today just to see what I see different. Jimmy Garoppolo had clean pockets about 95% of the time. There was a few plays where he had a pocket where he might have to navigate, or he might get hit. The majority of his pockets were very clean. Now, Did you see the same thing, or is it just me? Just because I know you and I have not talked about this game,
the film,
because we're gonna wait to talk film on this episode. Is that something that you also saw, or is it something that I'm going crazy about and I saw? Or talk to me about that.
I'll say yes, but with a caveat. I mean, the one clear play that we saw where Jimmy Garoppolo didn't have a clear pocket and had to move was when first drive, Spencer Burford had a miscue, just didn't pick up Aaron Donald in front of him, had a clean shot at Garoppolo who got away through the incompletion. There were a couple of times, maybe 3 or 4 max, but overall Garoppolo had a clean pocket. Now, Garoppolo's time to throw was significantly quick this week. It was in the 2.2s, it was under 2.5 seconds. That's what I know. And what I mean by that, Kyle Shanahan, Jimmy Garoppolo operated a quick game this week, trying to evade that Rams defensive line, take advantage of their matchup because the Rams had a depleted secondary. You didn't have your top corners, no Troy Hill, no David Long. You had Darion Kendrick, a 4.75 40-yard dash corner, a rookie starting opposite, and then you exposed him big time. And then I think Grant Haley was number 36 or 34 or 36. I think one of those two. But, it's a good amount of backup level cornerbacks playing for the Rams. So they utilized that matchup, kept receivers in space, and forced the Rams to play coverage, which opposite of Jalen Ramsey, they really couldn't. And even Jalen Ramsey got worked at sometimes by Brandon Ayuk. So to me, I did think that Jimmy Garoppolo had clean pockets, but I also thought it could have partially been because the 49ers were getting the ball out quick.
No, there was one they were getting the ball out quick too, but also there's a few plays where that the routes are
extended pockets were there. Yeah, the routes are developing,
and he's getting rid of it. He's throwing just real too quick. It's like, dude, you got a clean pocket, bro. Relax.
No, there was a really funny play. There was a really funny play. So Garoppolo is looking at his receiver on the right side, who's running an inside route. And he has a clean pocket. He does some ducking motion, turns and just throws the check down. You know the play I'm talking about?
Yes.
That was a funny play.
I believe the target was Brandon Ayuk on that play. I might be wrong.
Yeah, I have my notes, so I'll look at it right now. But it was a very, very funny play.
There was also a play I want to talk about. So I wish I would have clipped it, but when I watched film, I wasn't actually clipping. I was more so watching just to watch the film and see what I could diagnose. But there was a play where, so Brandon Ayuk is running kind of like a whip route in a way. He's running in and then breaking out, and it's a 3rd and 2. It was the play that Jimmy Garoppolo scrambled. Well, Jimmy Garoppolo had that was the cleanest pocket I've ever seen Jimmy Garoppolo ever have. Yeah. Instead of stepping up into the pocket, right? So what it was Brandon Ayuk is lined up far outside, so he's out there. He's the one, and then inside you got Jawan Jennings, who's going to run a deep post. So if you look at what's going on, Brandon Ayuk runs a whip route or a roll route back outside. Well, Jimmy Garoppolo is looking at Brandon Ayuk. His next read would be Jennings. So he's looking at Ayuk, sees Ayuk is covered, a very, very, very tight coverage, right? Instead of looking to his next regression, and if he does, he's hitting Jawan Jennings for about at least 15-yard play. At minimum, it's 15 yards. But no one was near Jawan Jennings, where I believe Jennings would have gotten 25 plus, and he might even score because it's one-on-one, him and the safety, and the safety is more shading towards the opposite side because on the other side, what happened was George Kittle was lined up kind of near the line of scrimmage or near the tackle, I should say. Debo goes in motion. When Debo goes in motion, ball is snapped. Debo runs pretty much a go route, but it's more kind of like runs a wheel route, and George Kittle runs a seam. Well, so they have to rotate because now Jalen Ramsey, it's 1-on-2, so that safety has to rotate and help Jalen Ramsey. So he has Jennings wide open. Absolutely the most wide open I've seen Jawan Jennings, because Jawan Jennings isn't the fastest dude. Actually, I lie. He was wide open a couple games ago, but he was so wide open. Jimmy Garoppolo doesn't even look his way, looks down, and starts to run. Those are the plays where I have concerns with the 49ers offense because, for example, the 49ers were playing, I'll be honest, the 49ers were playing a banged-up Rams team, right? Like, they really were. 3 starters out on the offensive line. They had a couple DBs out, a D lineman out. So realistically, we're playing. This is what they should have did to this team that is banged up. That's exactly what they should have did. So when you miss these throws or these I shouldn't say throws. He didn't make the throw.
It's reads.
You miss these reads against teams later in the season, like the Kansas City Chiefs, or when you play the Rams again, if they're healthy enough to compete. When you play Tom Brady and the Bucs, if you miss those reads, those will come back to bite you later in the game. Because those are the throws where even though 2-3 plays later, Deebo Samuel makes a fantastic play and goes nuclear, breaks 3 tackles, you're relying on Deebo Samuel to do that. And the thing is I get Deebo Samuel does that on a regular basis, right? Like, it's who Deebo is. but relying on a player to break a 55-yard play every game isn't going to work. You have to hit what the defense is giving you, and when you can't go over to the sideline yelling to the coach that his plays suck when you're missing these reads, right? So, to me, that's what concerns me about the 49ers offense. I don't know if that's something that concerns you, missed reads or high throws, because you also missed Jawan Jennings on a third down on a high throw. Those are what concern me. Not how Jimmy Garoppolo played. He played okay, right? He played good enough. But is that something that concerns you, Rohan?
I think so. And I wrote this in my article today, breaking down this game. Jimmy Garoppolo didn't hurt the 49ers yesterday. And what I mean by that, turnover-worthy plays, I don't think he had any turnover-worthy plays, which is a good sign, right? You don't want a quarterback who's turnover-prone to have turnover-worthy plays. And that was a good thing. But Jimmy Garoppolo consistently continues to have the same issues that have plagued him for his 5 years as a 49er. He has missed reads, and sometimes he reads the play and bypasses an open read. Sometimes he doesn't, he locks onto reads. We know that. We see it a lot, especially in conservative plays where he locks onto a check down. There was obviously the Kyle Juszczyk play, and I'm not necessarily expecting him to hit Kyle Juszczyk, but the entire defense on that play knew that Jimmy Garoppolo was going to throw to Deebo Samuel. Why? Because he did it last week. There was the Texas route last week where Jimmy Garoppolo was looking straight at Deebo Samuel the entire time, and Deebo Samuel still got open on that Texas route, except Jimmy Garoppolo hit it off a defender's helmet last week. And now this week, defenders knew. Nick Scott, the defender for Kyle Juszczyk, starts sprinting before Jimmy Garoppolo even throws the ball, maybe 2 seconds before he throws the ball, because he diagnoses the play. Same thing with, I think it was Ernest Jones as the linebacker in coverage. He starts sprinting to Deebo Samuel, and that breaks up that third down into, it might have been a fourth or maybe a close first down conversion. To me, here's what I'll say. Jimmy Garoppolo will make plays that will result in first downs on third down conversions or on second down conversions. However, the big play, the plays that are required to help win you games when it matters, he has shown an inability to make those plays, shown an inability to make those reads. A lot of times the 49ers ran this slant pattern from the outside with the inside receiver running an out route. It was a slant out. A lot of times that out route got open consistently. Brandon Ayuk ran it twice. George Kittle ran it once. And Jimmy Garoppolo didn't throw to them either of those 3 times. Sure, that slant route will get you 6 yards. But if you have open 15-yard, 20-yard plays, you've got to be able to capitalize on those opportunities, because this offense is already limited as it is. You need to capitalize on every scoring opportunity, and the 49ers have shown an inability to do that on offense. And until they do, you can't truly say that this team is a contender to win the Super Bowl over a team like the Bills, because that team can prolifically hit those offensive plays, and this team right now lacks that productivity. And it isn't on the receivers. It isn't on the head coach, although I honestly believe he called a worse game than he did in Denver. I thought Denver was pretty flawless. I thought this game was a little bit of a worse game. I thought this game was a little worse. We'll talk about that later. But if your quarterback cannot hit reads, cannot hit open receivers consistently and in the intermediate to deep field, if your head coach is scheming those plays up, those are one-at-a-time plays. And if you're not hitting them, your offense is limited. And that is what is going to hold the 49ers back this season if it continues.
So, in just so everyone's clear, Rohan and I aren't saying we want Jimmy Garoppolo to make deep throws or we want him to push the ball downfield. What we're asking is to hit the layups, right? Make a layup. So pretty much, if you guys those of you guys are sports fans, you guys probably know it's harder to make a left-handed layup than a right-handed layup if you're right-handed. So it's literally asking Jimmy Garoppolo, who's a professional athlete, to make a left-handed layup. Literally, that's all you're doing. When I'm not asking you to pull up from half court like Steph Curry and shoot deep like that. I'm asking you to make an easy left-handed layup. Can you do it? And he's a starting quarterback in the NFL, whether people like it or not. He is a starting caliber quarterback. You've got to be able to make those throws. And this is a big reason why teams didn't want to trade for him. I'm being honest. Think about it, Rohan. If you're watching film and you're seeing Jimmy Garoppolo, there's about 3 or 4 throws that I remember from this game in particular, either a missed read or a missed throw, right? 2 throws that were missed throws. One was to Charlie Warner, and the other one was to Jawan Jennings high. The other one, there's a couple missed reads that I saw. One of them was the Jawan Jennings missed read. And then the other one, you could kind of argue there was two in there that you could argue about. Another one was the Brandon Ayuk. Well, teams are looking at it like, why would I go trade for this dude when he can't hit the easy throws? When I'd rather have this quarterback, Marcus Mariota, at least attempt that throw. Right? Like, that's literally how teams see it. But the fans, and I'm not trying to be negative. We won the game. We kicked the Rams' butts, right? I'm not trying to be negative. But what we're trying to say, though, is we're looking at the future. We're not going to be playing the Rams. We're going to be playing the Chiefs in a couple weeks. We're going to be playing the good team, right? I don't worry about Jimmy against the bad teams. Yet, sometimes he does kind of play to other teams' levels that people forget about. So I'm kind of worried about this game. I don't want to jinx it, but he does play to teams' levels. So that's what I'm concerned about, Rohan.
And I mean, I think that those are fair concerns, right? The 49ers have a clear shot to go 4-2. I think I said it before the season, and even when Trey Lance got injured, the 49ers should win the division. I think the 49ers are the best team in the NFC West. And Monday night against the Rams proved it. Just because every team in the NFC West kind of regressed this season. The 49ers somewhat regressed, but not like they improved defensively. I think the 49ers kind of broke even, but improved in important facets. The Rams regressed, the Cardinals regressed, and the Seahawks regressed. I thought this was a clear shot for the 49ers to win the division, but not only should they win the division, they should be high up in the conference, right? They should be a top 3 seed in the conference. You don't want to go on the road 3 straight times, and to do that, you're going to have to beat teams like the Chiefs. You're going to have to beat teams like the Chargers. You're going to have to beat those tougher teams, the Buccaneers, later in the season, right? There are a couple of tough teams that the 49ers will have to play. And the remainder of this, their schedule indicates that they should have a fairly good season. I don't care about that. I care about how will they play against those tough teams and how will this offense respond against better defenses. That's what I'm looking forward to. Can Jimmy Garoppolo progress? History shows that he won't, because we've seen 5 years of Jimmy Garoppolo's inconsistencies, right? You'd expect some form of development that hasn't been there. Obviously, many 49er fans thought that in week 2, after those comments about Kyle Shanahan about being free, that there might be some semblance, some change from Jimmy Garoppolo. That clearly wasn't the case. He played his worst game as a 49er in week 3, so just days after he had those comments where he clearly contradicted everything he said. So I just want to see something different from Jimmy Garoppolo. He's got to play to a level in which, like, he can, if he doesn't make turnover worthy plays, that in a way elevates the 49ers offense. But you also need to have those plays that do elevate your offense rather than having your teammates elevate it for you.
I think it's hilarious that comment, right? Like how he was like, oh yeah, let me play like 2017, Kyle. Right, like pretty much what he did at the podium. Like he really was like, "Let me play a 2017 style where I'm throwing the ball downfield." And Kyle responded with, "Okay, well, you got throws down the field, my guy. Like you got the reads, you're missing them, right? The Denver Bronco game, Jimmy missed reads, missed throws. Comes back this game, missing reads and missing throws. So it's like, why would you even say that? Because now the real and I like, and the way I say it is, you got the big media, and then you got the 49ers content creators. You got 49ers media people who actually watch 49ers and actually tune into 49ers more than the actual big media, right? So one thing I do notice is we actually pay attention closer than the big media, because all they do is watch a game or two, and they happen to watch, for example, the Rams games, right? Like the Rams game where Jimmy looks decent, where he looks good enough. And they don't watch the other games, or when they do watch the Broncos game, they're oh my God, Jimmy was bad. Like, right? Like that was the worst game I've ever seen. Well, it's Jimmy every game. I'm sorry. That's literally Jimmy most games. So for me, I think it's interesting that the 49ers offensive attack has been, if you look at the way they've been playing, they've thrown the ball a little bit more than they have run, which I was not expecting from Kyle Shanahan. But the reason why Kyle Shanahan is doing this is because the run game is not there yet. Is that a concern for the 49ers going into like those teams like the Kansas City Chiefs, the Los Angeles Chargers, the New Orleans Saints, who have a good defense. Does that worry you as the games get tougher and tougher?
I yes and no, right? You do want the 49ers to play better offensively, and right now they haven't. They haven't been a top 10 offense in the NFL, maybe even a top 15 offense right in the NFL. But the thing that doesn't worry me is that this defense will continue to play as the defense played. I thought this defense this past week was a big test, not only because of the team. The defense played 74 snaps. There were 7 players that played all 74 snaps this past weekend, including all 3 of the cornerbacks and both of the safeties. This was a huge testament not only to how they can play, but can they will it through? Because they played a significant amount of snaps and only held up 9 points. I think this defense will put the 49ers in every game possible. It's just, can that offense give the extra lift, that little lift that you need to help you come over the top, to help you keep a lead, to help you not be able to blow that lead, to help you, make sure that you're consistently up in these games. And so that to me is the main thing that I want to see from this 49ers offense. We haven't seen it yet, but we have George Kittle, Deebo Samuel, Brandon Ayuk, Kyle Shanahan. Those 4 on its own should be able to create a competent offense. We'll see if the 49ers can improve their offensive rankings thus far.
Now, you said George Kittle, but I haven't seen George Kittle, right? Where has he been?
Let's talk about George Kittle. Let's talk about George Kittle.
You mentioned George Kittle, and the 49ers fan base keeps saying George Kittle this, George Kittle that. Well, where is George Kittle? I haven't seen him. I mean, last time I checked, him and Ross Dwelley have pretty much the same amount of receiving yards this year. George Kittle has played, I believe, 2 games, I believe. He came back last week, this week. I mean, Ross Dwelley really didn't play the Denver game, didn't play last this Monday. So technically they both have played 2 games, and they have the same amount of receiving yards. And Ross Dwelley's done it in 2 catches. Kittle has 6 catches. Is George Kittle the same tight end he used to be?
Yes. I believe so, because I've seen him get open on the field on film. Like, to me, here's the conundrum with George Kittle.
I got to stop you there, because people on Twitter, and the reason why I'm going to push back a little bit is because people on Twitter say that Kyle Shanahan is not calling plays for George Kittle. Is that true?
I can think that that's somewhat true, and here's what they mean. I'll specifically talk about the Denver game. Specifically talk about the Rams game. George Kittle was, I counted it, and my guy Jack Hammer did as well. George Kittle was a blocker. It was either a screen pass or as an inline blocker on 10 of the 27 Jimmy Garoppolo dropbacks. That's 37, close to 37.5%. Additionally, George Kittle, that's a significant amount of time spent as a blocker, more than the normal rankings. Additionally, George Kittle, he had 4 targets. There were 17 other dropbacks in which George Kittle did not play. In which George Kittle did run. So that's close to a 23.5% target share. That amount of volume is significant. The thing is, though, Kyle Shanahan's able to get him open, but he did utilize him a lot more as a blocker in this game than previous statistics indicate. And the reason, obviously, was no Colton McKivitz, and the 49ers implemented a quick game. The quick game doesn't necessarily help George Kittle because they don't call tight end screens, meaning he's going to be out there blocking for screens for Brandon Ayuk, screens for Deebo Samuel. How many 3rd and longs did you see where the 49ers didn't run a play that maybe features George Kittle over the middle, but instead a screen pass? The 49ers had a different game plan in week 4, and that's kind of why George Kittle's volume dissipated a little bit. On top of that, the last point that I want to make before you go is when he's open, he isn't being targeted. He isn't open all the time because he gets double coverage, because teams try and take away the middle of the field, because that's where Jimmy Garoppolo operates. And that allows some of those deeper intermediate in-breaking routes to come open because it's one-on-one coverage against weaker cornerbacks. But when he is open, he hasn't been targeted as much. He was open on an out route. He's open on certain plays, needs to be targeted more. And I don't think that's a Kyle Shanahan issue. It's a quarterback issue, and we've talked about the quarterback issues already.
So you said that George Kittle was out there running passes and running routes on only 17
dropbacks.
17 of his dropbacks, right? And he said he was actually blocking on 10 of the screen plays, right? Well, the thing is, though, is the 49ers know the run game is not up to par yet. Like, they understand that the run game is not up to par. So they're using those screens as an extension to their run game.
Exactly.
So realistic, like, with the way fans, like, they'll, like, cause I know you watch the film and you're going to agree with everything I say right now. So that's why I'm going to bring this point up. Because when your run game isn't going, you got to figure out a way to get the ball in certain playmakers' hands, like Brandon Ayuk, Deebo Samuel, Ray McLeod. Just
because a screen pass is essentially a different form of a run.
Exactly. So what they're doing is essentially they only ran George Kittle, or they only ran a route. Jeez. So they only ran 17 pass plays. Out of the 27, 10 of those were extension to the run game. So for me, I didn't mind that George Kittle was blocking on 10 of those 27 plays because they're trying to limit the amount of times Jimmy Garoppolo throws, really. That's literally what they did. So what they're trying to do is get that run game going because when you have 22 rush plays for only 88 yards, and if you look at all those screen plays, all that, you add it all up, it's about 32 rush plays. And if we were to go ask Kyle, I guarantee you, Kyle was going to be like, oh, no, it was just, we want to make these young corners who haven't played much come up and tackle. No, Kyle, you know exactly what you're doing. Your offensive line is not blocking the outside zone very good at all.
Exactly.
They're struggling to block the outside zone. So what you are doing is putting the run game outside. You're stretching the field horizontally in the run game, essentially through screen pass plays. And that's why I'm not necessarily worried. Because the only reason I brought up George Kittle the way I did was I'm not worried about George Kittle. Do I think George Kittle is still the best tight end in the NFL? No. I think Travis Kelce and Mark Andrews are ahead of him. But that's not because those two tight ends are the best tight ends we've seen this year, last year. Like, those two tight ends are ballers, right? So I'm not worried about George Kittle. I think what the 49ers are doing, they're trying to extend the run game that way. And that's why we see 27 pass plays to 22 run plays because realistically, they're throwing these quick screens to Deebo Samuel, Brandon Ayuk. I saw 1-2, Ray McLeod. They also ran a quick out to Kyle Juszczyk, which to me is an extension to the run game. He knew exactly where he was going. Quarterback's playing off. That's where you're going. It's not really a pass play to me. Yes, it's a pass play, but it's Kyle saying, hey, I need my run game going. I need to spread this defense horizontally so I could come back and hit them with the inside zone and try to get the inside zone going and then try to play kind of like an accordion, right? Like, you're trying to separate them in, bring them back. Like, you're trying to play with the defense, and I think that's why we saw so many screen plays because the run game is not there. And that's something we need to talk about. Are you worried about the run game outside of George Kittle? Because I know you're not too worried about Kittle. Either am I. Are you worried about the run game?
Not really. And here's why. I thought, honestly, the run game was a little better this week. Last week, it wasn't as good. I thought Jeff Wilson Jr. had a bit of a better game this week. Go for it.
So Jimmy Garoppolo is live, right, at the podium. He just said the Panthers were at the top of the list, one of the top couple teams he were in advanced talks with.
Really? He said that?
Yeah, that's interesting. He just said that right now. He said that they were the top couple teams that
the Panthers probably think they want Jimmy Garoppolo right now. Let's just be honest. DJ Moore is like, God damn it, you didn't get me Jimmy. At least, like, we might have not won games, but you would have got me the ball. DJ Moore ain't getting the ball out there.
I'm honestly expecting DJ Moore to be at this point. I'm expecting DJ Moore to be a Chief by the end of the year, or maybe like a Buffalo Bill by the end of the year. Like, that's literally where it's going because of that. Obviously the Panthers. But I thought that was an interesting tidbit right now when I saw someone sent a text to me and it came up on my computer. I was like, well, that's interesting.
But going back, you talk about the run game. I actually thought the run game wasn't as bad as anticipated this week. I thought, like, Jeff Wilson Jr., you see the 4.1 yards per carry. I thought in a way it's a little skewed. Teams are now, like, the Rams were very aggressive with their approach. They had 6, 7, at least 7 or 8 in the box on almost every play in general. And the 49ers, how do they operate? They manipulate the linebackers in the passing game. You saw Bobby Wagner. You saw Ernest Jones get manipulated in the passing game. Sometimes it didn't work because Jimmy Garoppolo didn't execute the play, but they manipulated these linebackers in the passing game. You saw it last week too. The big Kyle Juszczyk play, the Deebo Samuel run out of the backfield that Garoppolo underthrew. Like, you see it every single week, and this week was no different. The Rams stacked the box, and it was super creative from Kyle Shanahan. That 37-yard touchdown where you're running the Zorro play, the Zorro play, but it's actually a wham play where you cut it back into the middle. Great blocking. I thought the run game was better, and I think Jeff Wilson Jr. was a little better this week in that he's running as a downhill runner. He's just quick and decisive. The hole might not always be there, but he's running as a decisive player. And that's something that I like from Jeff Wilson Jr. And so that's something that I'm continuing to look forward to. But you're right in that the outside zone hasn't necessarily been working. You need these creative sparks like the Zorro to wham toss that Kyle Shanahan implemented in this week's game plan. It's not working to expectations with a guy like Raheem Mostert or Elijah Mitchell out there. But I think that there is positivity about the run game, and I still think that the 49ers are going to be able to operate if teams continue to play defense like this. It's just how much can Jimmy Garoppolo do? How much can he elevate this offense? That's the question that really will remain for the remainder of the year.
See, what worries me in the run game, Rohan, isn't Kyle, because I know Kyle could create in the run game. Obviously, we look at the first 15 plays of the game. So actually, John Lynch said earlier today that Jeff Wilson Jr. play was actually in the first 15. Like, that was Kyle's script. That literally something Kyle had designed. So I'm not worried about the run game in terms of Kyle being able to call plays and be able to get the run game going. What I'm worried about is the blocking in the outside zone. Like, they're just not getting out in front. They're not being able to get their hips around and get everything going like they're supposed to. And it might be because they're young. They haven't been able to do this against live action. You got guys like Spencer Burford who hasn't really played guard. You got guys like Aaron Banks who is, yes, it's his second year in the system, but he hasn't really been outside zone. When he was at Notre Dame, it's a different kind of style of run system they have there. So when you look at everything, it's interesting to see the run game on the outside zone not being there. And to me, all it shows is the 49ers missed Elijah Mitchell. That's literally what they do. They miss Elijah Mitchell's speed.
Yeah.
You could argue that the outside zone, and I know I've argued this with a couple on Twitter, that the outside zone isn't there even with Elijah Mitchell. It's a lot better when Elijah Mitchell's there than it is with Jeff Wilson. Jeff Wilson's speed isn't Elijah Mitchell's speed. Yes, Elijah Mitchell's speed is not Raheem Mostert's speed, but it's much better than what the 49ers have right now. And that's why we've seen, even when the first game of the season, Kyle was able to go inside zone faster because Elijah Mitchell's speed, and then he goes back to the outside zone and does that creative play calling that he does. So I'm a little bit worried because if we look at the 49ers schedule over the next couple games, it's two easy opponents. No, I should not say easy opponents, but two easier opponents than the Rams. And then they play the Chiefs. So essentially 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. They won't get Elijah Mitchell back until roughly after the Rams game, which is after the Chiefs, after the Rams.
And really, they're going to be conservative if they're going to continue winning. They might not bring him back. Like, I think they'll bring him back probably before bye week is week 10. So it's tough, right? I think that the latest they'd bring him back is week 11 against the Chargers.
And I think it's smart to do that, right? Like, it's you hold out a guy who you're going to need in the playoffs, right? Like, really, realistically, what the 49ers will do again is hand the load to the running game in the playoffs, ask Jimmy to do the bare minimum, and ask the defense to carry them. Like, that's what they should do. No knock to anyone. That's literally what their recipe for success is. So do you think, and this is something I know your answer. You're going to say yes. I guarantee it. Watch. Okay. Do you think Jordan Mason needs more carries?
Yes. Hell yeah. No. So I talked about this in my article today. I gave the running backs a B+ because I was pretty pleased with what Jeff Wilson did this game. At the end of it, though, I did a little blurb. Still, the 49ers continue to show hesitancy in utilizing rookie Jordan Mason, who has flashed with every opportunity he's received thus far. It would be smarter to diversify the rushing attack with Mason's physicality, which would, in return, keep Wilson healthier due to workload. That was my comment. I think Jordan Mason deserves more carries. I don't understand why he hasn't gotten it. And I think especially with the health issues that you've seen with the 49ers, it would be smarter to play Jordan Mason, or even, like, I wouldn't be a proponent of it, but if you're trustworthy in him, play Tevin Coleman instead. Play one of the two. Don't give Jeff Wilson Jr. extended workloads. Don't overuse
Coleman. Please don't do Coleman.
I'm just saying, use somebody else in addition to Jeff Wilson Jr. The 49ers rushing attack over the last 3 years has been predicated on diversifying their approach with several running backs, which keeps defenses on hold because they have to prepare for several different approaches. If you have Jeff Wilson Jr., that simplifies your game plan. And I understand that Jeff Wilson Jr. has played he played fairly well in this past week, in my opinion, like I said, but diversify it. Nobody has film on Jordan Mason, really. Utilize him and reap the benefits because he's played well every single time. Even the one carry he's gotten this season, he got 7 yards. And unfortunately, a fumble killed another opportunity for him because it seemed like he was getting a carry on the next play. So utilize him, and he's an asset for you. You roster him every single week. I don't understand it.
And that's what I've been very questioning of on the 49ers coaching staff.
Mm-hmm.
Why is Jordan Mason not being used? I mean, we've seen what he did in the preseason. I get you don't want a young rookie running the ball behind a young offensive line or whatever the case may be. But when we know that there's an injury concern behind Jeff Wilson, we understand that. We don't want him to break down. You need him for the whole season too. You don't need him. You don't need Jeff Wilson only until Elijah Mitchell comes back. You need both of those guys
for the entire year,
right?
Like Jeff Wilson.
It doesn't work. It doesn't work like, okay, well, hey Jeff, thanks for playing 10 games. Now we'll hand over the next 10 games to Elijah Mitchell. Like, it doesn't work that way. You need both guys. And realistically, I would like to see Jordan Mason get going, because now if you get Jordan Mason going, right? Now what happens is you have a young explosive back who runs the ball very hard. Now, once you put him with Elijah Mitchell, I think that pairing is going to work, right? Like, everyone wanted Trey Sermon to be that guy who could be the thump, while Elijah Mitchell is the speed, the lightning and thunder. And I think that's what Jordan Mason can actually provide. Plus, he has more speed than Jeff Wilson. We've seen it in training camp. We've seen it in preseason. He has more speed. And for me, it's one of those ones where one of these days, 49ers fans are going to be blessed to finally see Jordan Mason, and we're all going to be so excited. To everyone on Twitter, everyone on 49er fan base is going to finally be excited. We're going to finally be able
It's going to be
unite.
Today.
It's going to be exactly. We're going to be able to reunite as a fan base. You know, everyone's always arguing and fighting. We're going to be here to sit and be able to sit here and say, you know what, this is what we all wanted: peace. Jordan Mason is running the ball. Once that happens, Rohan, I think the offense is going to kind of take another step, because I think that's what they're missing. They're missing the speed element of someone, and I think Jordan Mason might be able to provide that. And he's also a natural runner. He sees the lanes. He sees the cutback holes there. Like, that's what the 49ers need, and they're missing, is a guy like Jordan Mason.
I think that's a very fair assessment, right? When you talk about Jordan Mason, he's been a guy who, like I said, has flashed every time you give him an opportunity. 49ers haven't given him an opportunity yet thus far. Hopefully that comes soon, and hopefully, like with if we're talking technically, you won't need him in the next 2 weeks, right? Even though the 49ers should dominate game pace, which should allow for more carries, and so to keep Jeff Wilson healthy, don't overuse him. You should utilize Jordan Mason. You're not going to need him in the next 2 weeks. But in those weeks, right before Elijah Mitchell comes back, when Wilson's workload is getting significant, remember, he's coming off an injury that really lingered until the end of last year. Now he's fully healthy, but you're utilizing him in a significant role right now. So I personally believe it'd be smarter to implement Jordan Mason in the game plan. I also question, when you talk about the coaching staff, where's the decision being made? Because Anthony Lynn has been seeming like he's been pretty supportive of Jordan Mason. When we look back at training camp, when we look at the videos of Anthony Lynn, when we look at like everything the 49ers have put out, it seems like he's been supportive. So is it a him decision, or is it a Kyle Shanahan decision to not utilize Jordan Mason? Because he hasn't really done anything to prove them wrong. He hasn't really done anything wrong in any sense, in my opinion.
No, I absolutely agree with you. So, like, there has to be the argument, and I get the fan base, like, oh, they question Kyle Shanahan as a play caller, or Kyle Shanahan as a head coach. But at the end of the day, like, we have to start playing the young guys. Like, you're playing the young guys on defense. You're not playing them on offense. And then when you do play them on offense, you play them
sporadically.
Yeah, sporadic. Like, you don't play him the right way. Like, you don't give him the reps. At a running back position, you need reps. You don't need one rep and then, all right, hey, your next rep will be in 4 weeks. Hope you get positive yards. Like, it doesn't work that way. Like, you got to be able to see the holes. You got to get the feel for the game. Like, that's how running back works. And to me, that's what I worry about for, like, young guys like Jordan Mason, because I don't know what trust he has to win. Like, he literally did everything he needed in preseason. He's looked good in the regular season when he's been given the chance. So that's, to me, what's very confusing.
Like, when you talk about the Niners, right, last year, Trey Sermon, right, that situation, he handled it very interestingly. They gave him 1 carry. He had 8 yards, got a concussion, and didn't play after that. And that situation was different because he got beat out in training camp, right? He got beat out by Elijah Mitchell. Elijah Mitchell was the guy who won the job. In this case, Jordan Mason beat out everybody else. He beat out TDP. He beat out, at least it appeared that he was beating out other players, right? He beat out Trey Sermon this season. He got cut, right? And so it seems like Jordan Mason was on the uptrend, and it seems like the Niners are handling the situation the same way, not giving them game reps, not utilizing the running backs when you have them. And it's sad to see, right? Because Jordan Mason, it's not like they're going to cut Mason next year, right? Because he is a talented back, and he doesn't. It's not like it's not like he's like a Trey Sermon story, but they're utilizing him the same way that they utilized Trey Sermon last year, which is an interesting development and something that I question for sure.
And the crazy part is that they do cut Trey Sermon, like, I hope everyone goes on an outrage because you cut, or not Trey Sermon, Jordan Mason, sorry.
Jordan Mason.
Because if you cut Jordan Mason next year after cutting Trey Sermon,
Tevin Coleman revenge game. Tevin Coleman revenge.
Me,
here's where it comes.
Like, it doesn't make sense, right? Like, why would you cut Trey Sermon and then, like, okay, Jordan Mason, you won the job. All right, cool. Like, now I'll get the ball every once in a while.
Like, and John Lynch said, he did it because of Mason's. Like, Mason emerged. Well,
and that's to me, like, that's what I'm confused by.
Yeah, I don't know. And no border sports. Could Mason be getting this treatment because of contract stuff? I don't understand how he's going to get $825,000 next year and the year after that. That contract he's an exclusive rights free agent because he's going to be technically hitting free agency next year because he's on a 1-year deal. He's going to be an exclusive rights free agent, and that means that if the 49ers offer him that $825,000 tender, he has to sign it. So I don't think it's anything to do with really contract situation because he's not going to be on the Niners in 4 years likely, right? They cycle through running backs like that. They don't pay running backs more than a couple of million, like $2 million. They didn't pay Raheem Mostert $3 million this year. So yeah,
Rohan, I think Jordan Mason's on a 3-year deal.
Really?
I want to say he's on a 3-year. Like, I want to say they signed him to a 3-year, $3 million, 2.5.
Is that true? I don't believe so. I could be wrong though. You're right. Oh shoot, you are right. Yeah,
because
3 years, $2.5 million.
When they signed him, because I remember when they had signed him, I had like the argument for him making the team was he's not going to be around for 3 years. He's around for 5 years, right? Like if he's good, he's around for 5 years because he's an exclusive right, and then he's a restricted free agent. So he's around for 5 years if he plays good. So. Mm-hmm. To me, now it's even worse that he's not getting the ball. It's like, hey, bro, he's gonna be around no matter what. Like, you're gonna keep him. It's a guy you're not gonna cut. Like, realistically, you won't cut Jordan Mason only because he's a young, good back, and you have only Elijah Mitchell going into his 3rd year. You have TDP going into year 2, Jordan Mason going into year 2. Those are your 3 backs next year. You better not draft someone in the 3rd round, or I swear.
They're going to do better. They're going to draft somebody in the 2nd round.
First. Oh, they don't have a first.
They don't have a first. 2nd round.
Makes sense.
Bijan Robinson, you're a 49er.
Dang, Bijan Robinson, and then you cut TDP. Sounds about right.
Yeah.
Well, no, I think Rohan. I think we did a fabulous job today.
But real quick before we end, there's one thing that I saw. Apparently, it appears that the 49ers are going to rotate Daniel Brunskill and Spencer Burford at right guard this week against the Carolina Panthers.
Why?
I don't know, but it appears that they are going to rotate the 2 guards. It appears from what David Lombardi is reporting, it appears that that's going to happen, and it also appears that Jalen Moore, according to Chris Furster, is the left tackle. Daniel Brunskill is not considered at the position. As I expected,
All right.
Blake Hance is going to be LT number 2. And Daniel Brunskill is the third string left tackle behind Jalen Moore and Blake Hance. I expected that. I thought Blake Hance would be getting the first reps, but instead they're going to be rotating Daniel Brunskill in at right guard, apparently.
To me, I think that is stupid. I think it's stupid. I really do. Think about it, right? The offensive line needs continuity. They need the understanding. They need the reps together. And you see, like, you know what? Hey, this rep, this series you go. Now you go. Like, what continuity are they going to get? Daniel Brunskill, don't get me wrong, he's a solid guard. He's a solid guard, better tackle in my opinion than guard. He has that athleticism, or I think he's a better tackle than guard. Now, putting him where Burford is, I get Burford has struggled to start the season. He looked much better in camp than he has in the regular season.
That's true. That is true.
So he is struggling a bit, but I don't think he's struggling enough to bench him or start getting someone else reps.
I think so too. I think it's interesting, and we talk about continuity. I mean, you have an example in the Rams last week. They had no continuity, and that struggles. Like, if you want to put Brunskill in, you better damn stick to Brunskill for the next. Don't do this rotating stuff. We saw how the rotating stuff hindered the offensive line between Brunskill and Brendel this offseason because there was no continuity in the offensive line. I hammered on it because I didn't like that situation. I thought if you're going to rotate one day. Instead, they did it in the same day. If you want, rotate in practice. Have one guy. But I think in games, it's far. You have committed to Spencer Burford. I think benching him here would set the offensive line back because you're going to have to implement a new guy in and have cohesion there. And now you're also going into the tougher part of your schedule in 2 weeks, right? You're facing the Chiefs in week 7. Maybe the 49ers believe that they can get Brunskill up to schedule up until week 7. But I think you got to ride with what you've done so far, especially seeing the potential of Burford and understanding how they take time. Best example, Aaron Banks. You had to take some time with Aaron Banks. He had an up and down training camp, and now he's blossoming into a pretty damn solid left guard over the first 4 weeks.
And that's the thing that to me doesn't make sense because we're looking at everything, and you start going to Burford, you go to Brunskill.
I thought it was fine for this game, given that maybe it provides you the spark, and it seemed like it was just to provide a spark in Burford, but to continue to do it, I don't know.
But how many reps? Because when I noticed it, I tried staying off of what I tried doing right now for the last couple of weeks, and it's been working for me. I've been able to actually enjoy the games a little bit more and actually watch the games. Is stay off social media while I'm watching the game, and I only saw Brunskill. This is like Brunskill in for probably 10, not even 10 reps, like 6 for one drive. I thought.
Can you? Here's something that I don't realize. I'm not exactly sure. Did he come in twice? I thought he came in at 2 different times. I could be wrong. I thought he
came in once.
Okay,
but I could be wrong too. Like I'm telling you, like I wasn't paying attention to anything on social media. I'm just trying.
But I was looking at the film. I was looking at it, and I thought Brunskill had come in later as well, and for a very short period of time for one drive. But I could be wrong. But yeah, it was interesting for sure. It wasn't much too, but it was like that's why I thought it was just to provide a spark, right?
Yeah, because like you're putting together like this random rotation now because like how many times has we look at Daniel Brunskill and Mike McGlinchey, how many times have they repped stunts? How many times have they done all this? Right? Like I don't think they've done it any times. Like realistically, since training camp, how long has he been back? 2 weeks? A week? I mean, you're playing with fire in a way where you're likely to end a drive if you continue to rotate. And the moment they end a drive because they're rotating in the continuity and the miscommunication, whether that's from Burford, whether that's from Brunskill, is the moment I will go onto Twitter and I will say Kyle Shanahan and the offensive line coach, Chris Boas or whatever, however you say his name, caused that drive to end. Because you're literally playing with continuity, and you don't do that at the offensive line position. You don't.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's something to monitor. We'll see if it comes true or if it's just talk. But that happens this Sunday when the 49ers face off against the Carolina Panthers in Carolina. Carolina, obviously, significant offensive struggles thus far. Pretty solid defense, but it should be a clear matchup. We might be previewing it Saturday morning, so stay tuned for that. But Marco, pretty good episode today. We wrapped up, recapped the Rams game, talked about Jimmy Garoppolo, the offensive inefficiencies, and what is the vibe going forward. Those of you guys in the chat, thank you guys so much for tuning in. We saw a good amount of different faces, and we appreciate all of you guys for always coming in with your support. Be sure to subscribe to this channel. My channel's in the description. Subscribe to it as well. And we'll be back very soon with another episode of 49ers Red Zone.